Good to see everybody this morning. We're going to get started in just a little bit, but thank you for sharing your information in the chat.
Good morning and welcome to everyone. Bienvenidos. My name is Andy Carey, and I'm the Executive Director of the U.S.-Mexico Border Philanthropy Partnership. We have an exciting presentation today titled Practical Strategies for Finding New Donors. This is the fifth presentation in a series of 6 with our friends, colleagues, and partners at Candid. We want to express our gratitude to Dave Holmes and Krista Berry for joining us today. Additionally, we want to give a warm welcome to our interpreter, Melissa de la Peña. We also want to thank Fundación para la Beneficencia Jesús Montemayor for their generous support for this project. Earlier this year, we launched Funder Information Network libraries across the U.S.-Mexico borderlands. They are located in Mexicali at the Universidad Autónoma de Baja California, in Ciudad Obregón at the Centro para Formación Social, in Ciudad Juárez en Fundación Paso del Norte para la Salud y el Bienestar, in Monterrey en la Universidad de Monterrey, and here in San Diego, California at the Border Philanthropy Partnership offices located within the San Diego Foundation building. Our mission is to support a network of organizations that build prosperity through leadership, collaboration, and philanthropy in the borderlands. Today adds another mark in our work for that to happen. We welcome the participation of our member network. Your support of our work is inspiring. To those not yet members, we invite you to become active participants in our organization. Your access to more programs and services awaits you, as well as unlimited access to the virtual Funder Information Network directory. Welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us. Enjoy today's session.
Thank you so much, Andy, and welcome everybody. So glad to see you all here. I'm joined by my colleague, Krista Berry, and we're going to do our Practical Strategies for Finding New Donors class today. It's a couple hours where we're going to take you through some of the things that you're going to need to know about establishing connections with the newest possible sources of funding for your organizations. And yes, we are recording the presentation. Might not be within 48 hours that you get the recording, but you definitely will get it. And by the way, some of the forms we have supplied, some of them are only available in English and some of them are available in both English and Spanish. we're going to make sure that the ones that are just available in English are also translated and sent to you in the follow-up. As I said, I'm Dave Holmes, Educational Programming Manager. I work out of our Cleveland office in Cleveland, Ohio. And I'm joined today by Krista Berry. Krista, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hola. Me llamo Chris. I was practicing this morning and vivo in Miami. Gracias por la oportunidad.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Krista. And Krista we'll be splitting the slides so you can talk to each of us. Please do send any questions that you have in through the Q&A or the chat, just so we can make sure that we get them. There will be also ones that we pause for as we do the presentation so that we make sure everything gets answered. This is a special training that we do at Candid. I have talked to you, if you've gone to any of our other trainings, about Candid, an organization, but this particular training is a partnership that Candid had with Fundraising Academy, and Krista is the former director of Fundraising Academy, and so she's a Candid staffer, but she's also particularly knowledgeable in this information. If you don't know who Candid is a national nonprofit, a combination of Foundation Center and GuideStar, two organizations that have been around for a long time. And we came together 5 years ago to create an organization that collects information on philanthropy and nonprofits, talks to you about how to access the funding for your nonprofits, and helps you share your story with funders, with people in the community, with as many different people as you can so that you can run more effectively. We want to make sure you get the information you need to do good. And so we have 200 employees. We're headquartered in New York City, and we have offices throughout the country and internationally with our partners. And we're really glad to see partner organizations joining us today for this particular program. We have many resources, including Foundation Directory, Candid Learning, which is our website of trainings, and the 400 libraries. That 400 number has ballooned in the last few months because we have developed a number of partnerships like the BPP partnership we have that take us to well over 1,000 organizations now. And we look forward to that continuing to grow. We're so grateful to Border Philanthropy Partnership and to Malora and Selith and Andy for making this very easy for us to do. So thank you all for joining us today. And hopefully you will get an answer to any of the questions you might have about the process. We do have a first question to ask you, and that is about your comfort level on finding and cultivating new donors. And we have some options here. I'd like to see if you could share in the chat. Oh, I see. We do have this as a
poll.
As a poll as well.
Fantastic.
So you can answer the poll, or you can put in the chat which of these terms would best describe how you feel when you are looking for individual donors. So let's see. Krista has shared in the chat. So think about that and see which would best describe it for you. I'm looking for answers. Let's see. Got a lot of people introducing themselves too, but
Yes, thank you for all the introductions. And we're looking forward to seeing at least a majority. It doesn't have to be 100%, whoever's running the poll. Comfortable or skilled? That's a great question. Use what you think is best. We like to use comfortable versus skilled because it's about your comfort level with it. You can be skilled and still go, oh, I don't know if I'm really comfortable doing this.
I'm glad to see that a lot of you are very comfortable, but then some of you are not. So I think it's going to cover a wide range here.
Yes. Do we have the poll results?
Let's see. I don't see them on my screen.
And I see a lot in the, okay. Oh, wow, this is quite a mix, folks.
Yeah, I see that. So about 28% of you are comfortable. About 32% are somewhat comfortable, 26% not so comfortable, and 14% superstars who are very comfortable. And then there's a number coming in the chat in between. By the way, yes, you will receive a copy of the presentation as well.
And we want those that are super extra comfortable to also keep the conversation going in the chat and offer some of your tips and strategies over the next 2 hours together as well.
Absolutely. So glad to get your information and your feedback about this. This class has a number of outcomes. And upon completion of this course, you should be able to assess how to qualify prospects. In English, the test is called the Madden test because of the initials, but we will be sharing information about qualifying prospects that you can do. We're also going to look at 10 different ways of prospecting and finding potential individuals to connect with. So if you feel comfortable, if you're one of those people that feel comfortable in this role, this is going to give you additional methods of doing it that you may not have explored in the past. And finally, we're going to talk about the role that psychology plays in how donors make decisions, because all of this is really about making the best connections that you can and finding the people that are most likely to respond positively to you, and then talking to them about what they're most interested in. So I'm going to ask you this question. I think that I'm going to finish up this by going in, asking you to share in chat. What motivates you to fundraise for your cause? What's the thing that excites you when you get into fundraising so that you have the energy to do it? A lot of you feel very comfortable doing it. Where do you get the energy for it? What motivates you? Please do share in chat. Let us know our mission. Yeah, the impact lives. Absolutely. To impact lives. Absolutely. Yes, changing lives. The people that benefit, making a difference, the emotional health of the community. Oh, yes, creating community. A lot of people sharing the idea of community.
Yep, and the impact and the mission.
Children.
Collaborating with other people, outcomes.
Change, finding commonality. These are all fantastic motivations. Oh, yes. Better education. The emotional health of the children. Oh, yes.
Love this.
These are fantastic reasons. And that's what we want to make sure that you are keeping in mind and kind of using as we talk more about this. Some people would think, well, I don't like to ask for money and I don't like to go to individuals because, you know, I just feel like I'm like begging for something, or that I'm going to put people off. And the thing is, when you concentrate on the motivations, when you concentrate on who's benefiting and why you so deeply care about what you do, it becomes a lot easier. It becomes like you're not asking for money for you. You're asking for money to make a change in the community, to help the children, to inspire the community, to inspire people, to make sure that you are getting the work that you consider important done. And I think that's the most important of anything. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, I love all these comments. Thank you so much for the interactivity and keeping the conversation going as well. Yeah, motivation is important. So we love to start by getting to know you. And also sometimes this work is hard, right, Dave? And it's helpful for us to kind of get back to like, what does motivate us to do this work every day when it can feel overwhelming. This is an important time of year for fundraising as well. People tend to be more generous, and actually data shows that people are more generous at the end of the year with holidays and other ways to celebrate with family. It's a time of year when people are being more generous. So yes, people give more at this time of year, but we also want to figure out what motivates donors to give. So that's why we switched up the question a little bit this morning, knowing that we want to get you out of here before lunch. So this is only going to be 2 hours, right, Dave? Is it time for me to try to share?
Yes. Why don't you go ahead and share your slide?
I'm hoping that this works, folks. So just give me one quick second. That way I can, oh, it's going back to white.
Can you hit the click? Because there was a fade in on that slide, so.
Oh, yay. That makes me so happy. It was going to be a whole new challenge for me to present with the Spanish slides, and I was ready for it, but I feel like you're going to get a better experience with me actually reading from the English slides today. So yeah, motivation comes from us in our fundraising, and it also comes from the donors and figuring out who the donors are. I think I saw a comment in there too that there's one thing to be comfortable cultivating donors and building those relationships, and then there's another challenge in like framing it and really knowing what you're asking for. I couldn't agree more. We're not diving into the detail of that, and really that can come with maybe some other courses that we offer in the future around how to really frame your kind of case for support and need. Today is really going to be centered in this relationship building model that we have partnered with this institute in San Diego on, called Cause Selling. And it's really because we all have important causes. And it's not that sales is bad. It's that we exactly are doing that. We're framing it in a way to get people invested and engaged in our cause. And it's a really nice model. There are a lot of fundraising models out there, but this is a really nice, I think, simple and effective model in 8 steps. I also wanted to pause and say, this is super exciting for me because I just spent the last 15 years living in San Diego. I know the region, and I know many of you with this cross-border connection are doing a lot of work in your communities. And it's a delight. I'm now in Miami, but it's a delight to be able to be working with all of you because I know the impact that you're making in a lot of those communities that you're working in. So I think you'll appreciate this. It kind of uses entrepreneurial business development tactics to help fundraisers like yourself build those relationships. And ultimately, what we're going to focus on today is those stronger prospect pipelines, because that's important any time of year, but certainly as we're like ending the year and moving into the following year. So this is the framework that we're using. There's not one right or wrong one. I did a lot of fundraising work in San Diego for many years. I was a part of a consulting firm that helped build philanthropy programs for San Diego organizations, and then was an adjunct and moved into teaching for many years. So there's a lot of different models out there, but we love this one because it kind of gives us 3 different phases, phase 1, 2, and 3. You can see them through the kind of colored sections here with 8 steps. And we really feel like it represents, kind of key steps to making sure that you go from kind of that good fundraiser to that great fundraiser, if you will. Today, we're really focused on 1 and 2. We're going to stay in that like kind of like dark blue 1, 2 prospecting and pre-approach phase, but there is opportunity for us to dive into either other phases or connect you with more materials, including the folks at the Fundraising Academy that you can probably take some of their webinars that will dive into some of the other stages. I wanted to note here that the ask is step 7 of 8. And that's why I think I was more focused on the comfort level, because it's one thing you all probably have the skill and you're gaining more skill today. But a lot of times, and I'll speak for myself, the more we do things, the more practice we have at anything, the more comfortable we become. And a lot of this work, because it's relationship building with humans, is pretty nuanced. That one time that you're going to make an ask with one individual might be very different from the next. But the more we practice it, like anything, Dave and I have been practicing teaching online for many years together. So we're ready to be able to troubleshoot in a lot of different scenarios where if it was our first time, it might be a little nerve-wracking. So, and then I love that stewardship is at the end, because I think it's a really also important way to kind of like frame what we're going to be talking about for prospecting. Is that stewardship is really that like thanking, showing appreciation, building the relationship. And often I think sometimes that can be almost the first step before you start actually building the relationship and prospecting, is thinking through how you might actually thank your volunteers, thank the folks that are on your board, show appreciation for community members that like you on Facebook before you actually start thinking about how you might prospect them for a gift. And actually, reminder, Dave, for me to go later before we leave and grab my new blog post that talks a lot about generosity in that
sounds good.
part of our cycle. Yeah. So this is our model, but we are going to dive deep today. That's why I love this course, because a lot of times we don't get a chance to dive so deep. Today, we're going to dive deep into that first step to help you prospect. And then ultimately, in the second half, we'll have about a 10-minute break in about an hour or so. And then we'll come back and get you ready for that pre-approach. So prospecting is really, how do you find a qualified donor? And I think the important word in there is qualified, okay? Because a lot of times I hear this, Krista, we need money. We're a nonprofit. We do awesome stuff. Show me the rich people. Like, first of all, that's not where I'm from. I'm not from the rich people part of the world. But that's not the impact that I've seen from most folks, is just rich people. There's a lot of people, including folks just like us, that are giving to organizations because we care and we're motivated about the cause. So we want to help you really get drilled down with some tools today on really finding qualified donors for your organization. So there we are, there's the step, and that's the process. Prospecting really is the process for looking for, searching. You might even hear researching prospective donors for your cause. There's actually a career out there. I'd be curious if that's their focus is, I mean, that's an opportunity. You can be a prospect researcher for a nonprofit. And there's a lot of tools that we have that prospect researchers use, but also it's pretty cool when you start thinking about this from like the individual donor perspective. Now that we have the internet and Google and all these amazing things to start to kind of like dive deep and see where these philanthropists and other folks in your community really are giving, so you can find better fits for your organization. So a qualified prospect really is someone who has the means to give, right? So there is money involved here, but we're not talking about the Mark Zuckerbergs, of the world in every situation. They don't have to be famous people that created Facebook to have the means to give. The ability to make the giving decision. This is also really important to note, because a lot of times we will be like, let's get to that, CEO of that corporation in our town. Well, maybe they're not the decision maker in the philanthropic decisions for the company. So really starting to drill down and figuring out who is the one that is making the decision with money. Most importantly, maybe not most importantly, but like super, super, super important, having interest in your organization's mission and cause. Again, that's why we asked that in the beginning. It's going to be a thread for our conversation today. But just because they have money and the ability to make a decision doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be connected to your causes. There's a lot of great causes out there. You want to find the ones that are most interested and excited about your work. And then the final piece is having an existing relationship. If they're a stranger and they don't know about you, they're not a qualified prospect, period. They might be a prospect, and that's where we start using this kind of 8-step cycle to identify and get to know them a little better, but they're not qualified until you have a relationship with them. So either that comes through volunteers or your board, any leadership that you might have, your CEO, or if you're the CEO, maybe you have an external relations person that's out there in the community. Maybe it's like a program member of your staff that's doing something on the weekend and runs into somebody that might be an amazing prospective donor. So it doesn't matter what level or hierarchy within your organization that the relationship lies, but we really want to make sure that there's an access point to actually build a plan to ask them for support. If we don't know how to call them and we don't know how to contact them, they're not qualified yet. So we have this tool, and I think this is the one where, because of the letters for it, we attempted to translate, but we will make sure to get you any other versions of translation for this as well. But it's called the Madden test. And it really is a great tool for us to think through, and you can adjust it how you want, but it helps you kind of put a little, it's kind of like a game or like a little test for them, but it helps you start to prioritize your time with your prospects. So M stands for money. A stands for approachable, right? If someone's like, I've got money and I like your cause, but please don't contact me, they're not qualified. Let's not go up that tree for ourselves. Like, there's much better folks that we can be spending our time on out there. There's a desire to give. I've had this experience a lot, especially in the work that I did in San Diego, that they were qualified up until the point where they said, you know what, Krista, there's a lot going on in my family right now. Now is not the time. And so we kind of move them because of the desire. We move them off of the priority list, and we revisit when they're going to be qualified again. Decision maker, that's a key one. Often, I'm trying to think of some scenarios that I might have had in San Diego where, there was the kind of like the man of the household was the one that was perceived to be the one with the money. Maybe he was the one that owned the company, but actually, when we got to know them a little better and qualified them, it was actually the woman of the household that was the decision maker for the philanthropic decisions.
And
That's
it's
one
really,
scenario,
you
right?
can't assume, yeah, you can't assume any one of those is true, because the decision maker in a household isn't necessarily who you assume it should be. And if you start thinking like, if you address everything to one person, it's the other person making those decisions, that can really affect how they think about you, and they think maybe you're not listening to them.
Yes.
So very careful with that.
Such a huge one. And like, that's why sometimes a lot of this is being really mindful about how you're tracking relationships and addressing it to the household instead of the one person is so key. There's so many different versions of families and households now too. We have more blended families. Often maybe it is a grown adult child that are making more philanthropic decisions for households now too. So really, this is all like, Krista, how do I find that out? Don't worry, we're going to give you tips on how to do that. But the decision maker is a big one. We also want emotion to be attached and connected to the work that we're doing, and making sure that they have a connection around emotion to your cause. And finally, the need. The need is really, I want to make this donation now. It's the end of the year. I've assessed my finances, and it's really important for me to give back right now. And so these can be used kind of interchangeably. But what we've done is we've put together this handout or worksheet. It's a prospect qualification worksheet for you. And this is kind of like my suggested homework. Hopefully you already have some top prospects that you're thinking about, or your board has suggested or brought to you. If not, there's a great activity that you can do at another board meeting around, like, let's everybody just kind of like put our heads together and bring some new prospects to the table. Once you have those, you can use this by basically in the top prospect column there, list the name. Okay, so this time I'm like, I know this person from Cleveland. His name is David Holmes. He's very connected to the cause at Candid. We know that he cares about this work. We're going to put Dave Holmes' name here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the MADDEN, and we're going to go, does Dave have money? Yes, circle. Is Dave approachable? Okay, maybe not much because he works for a nonprofit like the rest of us, but we know that he has money, and I actually know that Dave is also philanthropic, so he gives back. Is he approachable? Yes, we know that. We have a relationship with him. Does he have the desire? Yes, circle. Is he the decision maker? Yes, circle. Does he have kind of the emotion and need? Actually, I'm not sure. Those are the ones where I'm like, maybe, but I know he is very involved in the community and gives back a lot and probably has the capacity to give. But I actually want to like get to know him a little better and check in and see, is my cause where he is giving to? Is this something that he wants to dedicate more time to? Has his giving priorities shifted over the last year since I've seen him? So the emotion and need for me when I think about this person, Dave, is kind of questionable. So I'm not going to circle those. And then what we have is 1, 2, 3, 4 of the Madden qualifiers for Dave, which gives him a score of like a B, class B, 3 to 4 Madden qualifiers. So that's his score is B. Referral source, I know him. And then we start to go, okay, what's the strategy for essentially following up and ideally moving Dave to either an A because we know more about him, or once we get to know him, kind of taking him off our top prospect list. And this really starts helping you prioritize your time with your new donors. I want to just frame prospecting. It shouldn't be the only thing that we're spending our fundraising time on. We obviously need to kind of guide our day and our month and our week and our year around all the different activities. And there's so many activities that you're going to do with your existing donors as well. But you also might consider some of your existing donors that are maybe giving at a lower level, putting them into this kind of Madden test and seeing if there's an opportunity for some of your existing donors to give more. So you can also start thinking about prospecting new people, or, I was analyzing my fundraising data before my year-end giving campaign that I'm launching soon, Krista, because Giving Tuesday is coming up. And I was realizing that this person donates online to us every year about $100 at the end of the year. And they're pretty consistent, but I really actually don't know much about them. Madden them. They have money. You have a relationship with them. Whatever you've collected from them, at least an email address, hopefully, and a name, maybe even a phone number. It feels like they're just the decision maker because they're donating. There's an emotion there. So this is a perfect person to kind of re-Madden. And maybe we're going to kind of cover this in the second half of today around a pre-approach and a strategy on how you actually might get to know them. And this is a great person to add to your qualifying prospect top list. And again, every time you start to kind of get to know them a little more and you create a strategy for them, this is a list that's going to be evolving and changing all the time. As a fundraiser and as a fundraising coach for many fundraisers and CEOs over the years, I recommend that you do have a list between 10 and 30 regular top prospects that you're regularly staying in touch with, adding to and taking away the more you qualify them, and regularly looking at this list. As a fundraiser, I'd say weekly, you should be at least like pulling out your prospecting list and going, okay, what's my next step with them? Did I email last week? Let me not like overwhelm them, right? Like which newsletter are they going to get at the end of the year? And always start like spending time on what this list can look like. This is one tool, but you can adapt this for your organization. You get the idea. Maybe the MADDEN isn't exactly all the qualifiers that work for you and who you're trying to essentially get for your organization, but you can create something just like this for your organization where all the members of your executive team and your board are involved in this process of helping you not only put these folks on the list and get to know them better, but to create strategies for follow-up. Am I missing any major cool things that are happening in chat or urgent questions, Dave, or even our experts giving good advice?
Well, what I'm seeing is that a lot of people are getting the materials and downloading them in English and Spanish. I don't see any questions that have come through that we haven't addressed, but maybe if Melora sees anything, she can let us know.
No questions, Krista.
Okay, wonderful. And please, we know that this is a webinar, but my style is a little more informal in a way. So please, if you do have anything, Melora, like interrupt me and Dave as well. So yes, my suggestion to you is take this now that you've downloaded it, make it work for you. And it's Thursday, so my homework for you is in the next week, especially if you're doing any kind of year-end fundraising campaign, try to fill this out and just explore it with 5 people. Just like I just did one with Dave, right? We've got some partnerships that we're working on here at Candid as part of kind of my role in our equitable access work. And I could think of 5 people and or organizations that we want to work with that I could put through the Madden test immediately, right? You could use this for potential board members, some kind of classification system, because then that helps you. I'm not saying that like Dave being in class B isn't a priority, but if I had somebody else on the list that was like all 5 class A, that really helps me now prioritize my time and my prospecting approach. So we talked about it earlier. It is about comfort level, but a lot of times the comfort level comes from the planning and the strategy behind it too. And that I remember, like myself, you know, kind of a newer fundraiser or working with newer fundraisers over the year. It's kind of like, oh, what do I do? How do I even know how to start with kind of people that I don't know, right? And then if you don't have that approachable or that existing relationship, that helps you create a strategy. Okay, should I be going to networking events to meet them? Do I need to use LinkedIn? And we're going to give you some more tips on how to use that, but that's how this starts putting a plan together for you.
And I think this is good in coupling with what Cecilia just asked. How do I know the emotion and need of a prospect I haven't met yet?
Yeah.
Which I think until you meet them, you can't really judge, or until you start to interact with them, start to do research on them, you can't really know their emotions and their needs. But this is the start of the process. You have to kind of select them so that you can build your knowledge and build your connection to them.
Right. I mean, it's kind of the obvious part of it too, is that like, if you put a prospect on this list and you know none of the MADDENs, how qualified do you think they're going to be? And then where do you put your time? So I absolutely agree. Like even for my scenario with Dave, I know Dave and I know he's going to have all these things, but the fact is like, I actually haven't talked to him about this in the last year, for example, and things may have changed. So even if you do know them, we can't make assumptions for what's going on with their, you know, with their lives and what their interests are. And things do tend to shift. That's another thing that I've seen. So it'll help you go, you know what? They're being super direct with me once I have my first call and they're saying, you know, thank you so much. This happened to me at one of the organizations that I worked for in San Diego. I called everybody. I kind of like prospect them, tried to re-engage folks that had been in the organization before through a process like this. And they told me, you know what, we were really involved as donors in your organization when our child was younger. Because it just made so much sense for us to be able to give to you. But now our child's older and we're involved in other causes. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. We support you. Leave us on your newsletter, but like we're not really investing at that level for your organization anymore. Wow. How valuable is that? That's like super valuable information for me, because now I'm not churning my time trying to put this person in a major donor program. And that feedback was so helpful. So that's what happens. Then you hear that emotion and need back from them, whoever asked, and now you can take them off your prospect list, make sure that they're all like tidy and like the relationship's nice in Salesforce, whatever CRM you're using, you know, just keep them on the newsletter, maybe revisit in like a year. Okay.
And I think
Dave,
go ahead.
Oh,
Chris.
no, go ahead. Because I was going to ask you if you wanted to share or if I should keep sharing.
Why don't you keep sharing, and then we'll see about answering this question. Elizabeth is asking, you said end of the year is a great time to fundraise. Is there a graph on what months are best to approach future donors? Or how can you gauge when it is best to approach? You do it by their desire, or is there another way?
It's such a good question. And there isn't like a standard answer, but what I can give you is some data. Okay. And we had some data in the original deck and we wanted to keep that in for you to look at, but it's mostly US centric data. So that's the other thing. You know your community probably better than anybody else, wherever you're fundraising. So trust that you know the community. If you don't, get in the community, be in it, be proximate to where you're doing your fundraising and doing your work. But a lot of the data around that in the US specifically, because that's what's been reported, shows that the majority of the funds for the entire year come in the last month, December. And I just wrote this article this like year, it was just published the other day, and it consistently shows it's about a quarter of the average nonprofit's annual revenue comes in December. And that may be cultural because of, we've got a lot of different, religions and holidays and year-end ways to celebrate in the US, but it's just, I think that's what happens. There's two pieces of it. One, there are holidays and people are feeling more generous around holiday season. And then two, for us, it's the end of the year. So that's, people are able to make different funding decisions based on their annual, how they're spending their annual dollars. So oftentimes they may have made a donation earlier in the year, but they're looking at their own budgets and saying, you know what, before we end the year and kind of think about tax season, things like that, we've got a little left over in our savings. We want to make an impact and really give back. I think those are the two motivators.
That is really good. I think that is a good way to start thinking about it. And it just, for everybody's knowledge, I just posted the blog that Krista just published. I just put it in the chat. So you can learn from that as well.
Yeah, year-end giving is, I would say, whether it's a big deal in your region in Mexico or not, I would say people are feeling more generous this time of year, and why not take advantage of the opportunity to just send more communications out. So there's two pieces. One, year-end giving is a great opportunity for folks that you already know, to kind of answer your question, to get re-engaged and to give again or for the first time in the year. It's also a great time to use social media, for example, and people that you don't know that might be following you to get involved in your cause. Maybe they won't give like an actual gift, but if you're finding ways for them to get engaged, get on your newsletter. One of the suggestions I have is have a stewardship or an appreciation event and invite folks that haven't necessarily given, but have been involved in your organization. And this is where you can start inviting potential prospects to come and get to know your organization without necessarily asking them for money right away. And then you get to get their name, get their email address, drop them into your Madden, qualifying your prospect list, and now you can start building a relationship. So prospecting all year round, but might as well take advantage of this kind of season of generosity and put some top prospects into a little bit of a plan over the next few months.
Very nice. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take over some of the talking for a little bit until we go into our break. And I'm going to talk about the different methods of prospecting, because there are lots of different ways you can approach people that you haven't approached before. And it isn't always the first thing that you think of. You may have a way that you like to do it. We did have a question that came in, how long to wait until asking after visiting a prospect? And that is going to vary sometimes about how well you feel you need them. You remember those 8 steps that Krista showed you earlier? The ask part is towards the end. Once you feel comfortable enough so that you know that when you make the ask, you know what the answer is going to be. You are almost certain that they're going to say yes. So that can be immediately with a person that you met and who is right on page and wants to give and is eager to give. Or it could be after several weeks, several months, maybe another year. It really depends. What you want to do is feel that when you ask that question, are they going to give, for money, that you know that the answer is, at least you have a good idea that the answer is going to be yes. Krista, do you want to show the different methods? I mean, sorry, or do you want to add?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. They're kind of animated here. So I'll go with them. And this is kind of like a quick overview, and then we're going to dive deeper into each one in a few slides.
And some of them are self-explanatory. Some of them are a little bit different, but we'll
right.
Circle of influence. We'll talk about each of these. Using events for prospecting, direct email and mail, social media. And then those are the warm calling.
Versus cold.
Versus cold calling, warm calling. We'll talk about these. Networking. I became an expert in networking yesterday in a training. Ready for that. Organization initiated prospecting.
Yeah. We'll
There
talk
are
about
some,
what that
yeah,
is.
some of these you won't know exactly. But you're using your website and using crowdfunding, and we'll talk about each of these. But let's start with the first one. Referrals. Have a person make the initial contact for you. It's so much easier when you are meeting a new person for the first time to have a person that you know that can be an intermediary. You can maybe it's somebody that's given to you before. Maybe it's somebody that's a friend of a friend, and you see that other person, you think, I really want to see about approaching them, but I'm a little nervous because they don't really know who I am. That friend introducing you is one of the best things that you can have. Ask, don't be shy to ask for a referral from people, because people, one of the things I noticed about giving, particularly when it's at a season like this, and we actually have another blog post that's similar to this, is that people love to be involved in making those connections. People love to, when they can't give or they've already given, to make it possible for a third person to give. People don't give referrals sometimes when they feel manipulated, or they feel connected to you, or they don't want to bother the other person. But one of the things that we saw when you were talking about your organizations and the passion that you have and why you can talk about your organization, if you can communicate that passion to another person, you make it possible for that person to make connections for you without feeling bad, without feeling that they really want to do it. They really want to feel better. What to ask, the kind of contacts that should be made, it varies, but a lot of the times it's just simply setting up an initial connection, setting up a way to be in the same place with this person. Make it a regular part of the fundraising cycle, meaning don't be holding back. Make sure that you work ahead of time so that you know at this event or at this time it would be a really great time to meet. Don't wait until December 29th to try and get a gift right before the end of the year. Oh, I need to meet your friend. I need to meet your friend tomorrow so that we can get the money soon. That's not going to help your situation. Make it something that you talk to the person in advance. You think about what is going to be a relaxed way to be introduced to their friend and have it help. Any other suggestions, Krista, that come out of that?
Also a great way to leverage your board. Like, we know when we talk about fundraising, we know we all need to continue to re-engage our board. It's rare that we meet a nonprofit that's like, my board's amazing and perfect. And so this is also a great way to get your board involved in fundraising. So think of these prospecting methods as ways to get your board involved too. If they have somebody that they're willing to bring and make a referral to you, that's huge. Don't pressure them, but keep it as an open, regular conversation.
And Marcela is saying she's had two connections. One asked for a referral. I provided it, but I never got any answer. The second, the same, but I put some more pressure, and neither of them have responded. Sometimes that's the way that it goes. Sometimes you can do what you consider to be the best introduction, or you can have a person introduce you and you think this is a perfect match for them, but it doesn't follow through. You can only do what makes the most sense. Without, you don't want to keep badgering somebody until not only don't they want to give to you, they don't ever want to talk to you again. What you want is to think about, I've made these connections, I'm going to keep these people on the back burner, and then if there's another way that I can make a connection to them, it becomes possible.
That's why you're going to love these 10. We're going to go through all 10 because you can get the referral, but then you might want to incorporate some of these others into your strategy. Yeah. This is your job. That's why we call it cause selling. This is your job. So if you think they're qualified and you want to do some other of these methods, once we get through them all to try to keep them qualified, you keep them on your list. Okay, that's why you should have kind of a regular list. It's just more about prioritizing your list so you know where to spend your time on them.
So we have a referral. You also have circles of influence. And basically, these are people that you work with and are in a group. The people in your circles of influence are connected to the different your organization, but connected with a lot of other organizations at the same time. And if you can think about that, think of the people that you know, that you see they're on this board and they're on that board and they're on a third board. Maybe it's they're on your own board, and yet they have an incredible connection to numbers of different things that could be a way of giving you ideas and giving you names and giving you potential connections. There are people that serve as your ambassadors, and those are the people that are in the community. I can think of a number of people that I know that just seem to have the connections in the community, and so that relationship building is a lot easier with them. Now, oh, that's okay.
Yes. I was going to suggest too, Dave, for example, think about the groups in your community. When I moved here to Miami after being in San Diego for 15 years, I joined the local Chamber of Commerce. And I've heard a lot of great stories from specifically smaller organizations joining chambers of commerce in their community that might be a little smaller, because it's such a great circle of influence. Everyone here in my chamber of commerce, first of all, it's an amazing chamber. Hopefully they're all as great as ours, but we're here to help each other.
Yeah.
That's
And
the point of the group.
It can be a chamber of commerce. It can be
Yep.
a group of fundraisers. Association
Yep.
of Fundraising Professionals International is a great group to get involved in your region or in your area. If they're not there, there may be a more of a grassroots, more of a ad hoc group of fundraisers that you can get together with.
Yep.
People that are in the same situation, working together. When I worked as a consultant, one of the best things that I had were friendships with other people that knew how hard your job is, and that want to help you the way that you want to help them, and are connected in a way that can make that possible. You know, I have their phone number. I know this person. I can tell them I'm going to see them on Friday. I can mention to them that you want to talk to them.
Yes.
It's similar to referrals, but it has an even stronger power.
Yeah.
Because you're using the skills. You're basically, it's getting you to a place where you are being told, not just, I think this person might be a good donor. It's, I know this person is a good donor in one way. I'm going to try and help them be a good donor to you.
And using that group kind of mentality to support each other. Rotaries, we have Rotary clubs here. It's also a group mentality of like, we're all going to do something for you and you're going to do something for us. It's like a reciprocal circle versus just a one-way transaction.
Local neighborhood groups, local groups in the city of merchants and other different, there's just so many
business associations. Yes. Maybe it's even like a coalition. If you're helping youth in your community, is there like a coalition of other leaders that are helping youth both in the nonprofit space, but also in, the government space or the private sector? Thinking through things like that. Oh, this is a fun one too, Dave.
So event prospecting means you have events, and most organizations will have a signature event. We really advocate for around the Giving Tuesday, the start of end of the year fundraising that happens after Thanksgiving, as a real great time to have an event that isn't necessarily about fundraising, but is about making sure you get the names and the contacts for people that come. You have an event to welcome people from the community into your nonprofit. You have just a thank you event for everybody who's been in some way connected. That's going to be attended by people who have already given to you and people that have never given to you. So the power of these kind of events is not to then go in and you've got them trapped in a room and you're going to ask them for money until they get sick of you. It's going to be about, let's make a connection, get somebody's email address, get somebody's contact information, and maybe if you have a chance to mention to them that you'd like to reach out to them someday. It doesn't have to be a hard sell. It can be very easy and a great way to build those connections that otherwise you're doing cold calling, you're trying to locate, you're doing research. This is research without actually being research. I like it very much.
Yeah, it makes the event that much more impactful beyond just the actual day.
Yeah. Now, there's some other ones that are more traditional. I would say direct email and direct mail are a really good way of making connections. Direct mail and direct email, I think they get a bad rap, especially direct mail anymore, because people are like, I don't want to open any letters. I don't want to do this. But the words that are most important in this are the terms well targeted.
Yep.
And those words mean, don't just send something to dear occupant and say, I really wish you would give me money. Nobody's going to do that. That's just not going to work. But a letter to a person that is really approaching them with what you know about them, if you know that they have given to similar causes, whatever you know about that person, that will get them to open. I have a friend who is a fundraiser, and she is naturally good at these kind of messages. She will send an email, and immediately, even though you know it is a fundraising email, you read it because of the story and the way that she engages you. And it is much more about, this person took some time to write something that I wanted to read. And then the second level of it, the idea that you might be connecting with them to then get some funding from them, it doesn't usually enter into it. It's just like, oh, you're inviting me to join you in this event, or come to a meeting, or do this kind of things. It feels more effective that way.
Yep.
The trouble with direct email and direct mail and how they've gotten bad raps is that people try to make it, okay, here's us, give us money, you know, we're great. And that's just not going to work. I don't know if you have an example, Krista, that you would think of as great use of direct email and mail.
So one of my new colleagues in my new circle of influence with the chamber, she is the new executive director here at the Haitian American Chamber of Commerce in Miami. And she just told me the other day that she's starting her own newsletter. So there's the organizational content that goes out, but she's starting her own newsletter to prospect, to bring in new donors to her organization. And she's like, Krista, what do you think? And I'm like, brilliant, Nadia. It's such a good idea, because now it's like from the desk of the executive director. And now she's got her own kind of set of content that is, it's direct email for her. She's using an email as this method, but she's putting basically folks that she meets out and about. We were just at a pretty big event with our economic development corporation here. She met a bunch of people. Now she's going to take those people and put them in her direct email campaign. And I'm like, I think she's going to do it like maybe once a month, quarterly, say like, this is what I'm up to. These are the things that the chamber, or her chamber has been up to. And here are ways that you can get involved, because she's not only looking for new donors to the organization, but she's also ultimately looking for more membership, which she knows the things that she's looking for, and our board members. So, and then she gets to prospect them based on, telling them more about what she's up to. So it's quality content from the CEO, and it's targeted to her kind of VIP list.
Yeah. And we have a question asking for an example. And I would say that even if we do, we could probably find an example that we could share. But the thing is, the example that you want is not something that's copied from someone else.
Oh, like a sample email?
Yeah. I would say that the best emails are the ones that have your voice in them. Are the ones where I'm reading it and I don't think this is written by their marketing department, or this is written by a consultant that they hired. Something that's written from their heart and from directly is going to be more effective.
It could also be as simple as not a list, but like you just sending an email to someone that you met the other day, or that was referred to. All of these are ideas, but they kind of work together. This is where it goes from like the science to the art. We say that in fundraising a lot. It's like a science and an art. And so this is kind of where it gets a little like artsy for you, because you know your work the best.
Right. And I'm going to ask Krista if we could move along, because I want to make sure.
And if we only get through half of them before the break, Dave, we've got plenty of time to complete this list.
Okay. Well, why don't we do this one as?
Yep.
Oh yeah, we'll get
there. We go. Too many clicks, Krista.
All right, so we'll take a break immediately after number 5 here. Number 5 is social media. Don't focus solely on likes or followers. Yeah, I think that I have met more social media experts in the last 5 years than have ever, I think, that have been the number of people on Earth. Everybody has an idea of what makes the perfect social media communication. And there are so many ways that you can slice and dice it. Well, you know that people on Facebook are of a certain age, and then people on Instagram are a different age, and people on Twitter and people are X or whatever it's called, and all the different things. The important thing to do is to use it with the people that you think are going to be responding, that you think, if you're going to be doing a social media post, you have an idea that there are the people that you want to reach there. We're not talking about trying to find as many followers as possible or to get everything to be liked. Offer the people that you are connecting to something real and regular calls to action. Just a call to action doesn't mean necessarily, here, give us all the money that you have. It's a call to action is, show me a reason why I'm reading this, and show me something that I can do to make the world better because of it. Something where it talks about a single way to benefit the people that you serve, something easy for them to do. Can you pass this along? I read as another part of this blog that I had been reading recently was about the idea that people in the Generation Z, and I'm not sure where the dividing line is, old to know, I think, exactly where Generation Z is, but there's a lot of feeling that those, I would call them kids, the people that are using social media during this, from this generation, are used to the idea of helping out and of passing along and sharing this kind of information.
Yeah.
And sharing the idea that, oh, you have something that you need, I'm going to get this out to my followers and to my people. It's a great way to think about, how can you communicate how can you get it to people that you'll never meet, and without thinking too hard about it. Think about the groups of people that might be reading what you're like. Asking them to share it may double the number of people that read this,
Totally.
or triple it, because you're doing what you would do with a referral or with a circle of influence, getting to people that are out there that that might be interested, but you don't know them personally.
Yeah. I'll add too, Dave, that social media is awesome, and it's also overwhelming, especially for small organizations that may not, be in the position to, once you get into it, as many of you know, it's kind of hard to stop. So if you're a smaller org, or you're an larger org that just hasn't gotten to the point in your kind of life cycle where you're like, we have a social media person and does this all the time, I think that you can still use the power of social media, as Dave explained, but through partnership. So who are the players in your community or in your subject matter, or folks that or even volunteers that actually do use social media, that could this is how they can help get the word out to potentially have you meet new people and expand your story without you necessarily needing to embark on your own social media plan. So there's a balance there. You don't always have to see yourself as the one that needs to do it, but more trying to think of a good example. Here, our community foundation in Miami, it's Give Day, and a lot of community foundations will do this. They'll create a very regional fundraising campaign day before a lot of these other kind of more national giving days. And so what everyone's doing is they're sharing for each other. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to send the email about that, because one of the other organizations just sent me an email this morning. Don't forget, it's Miami Give Day. Now I can go and find the organization I want to give to. I don't need them to be emailing me or doing social media posts about it for me to be reminded that I can go find my cute, small, special, favorite community-based organization to give to. Okay, so leverage those kind of other social media channels too, and newsletters. Are folks okay with a 5-minute break to just stretch, refill your water, tea, cafecito? Have you done 5 minutes before? Should we give a full 10 days?
Let's do 5. Let's do
I think
5
5
minutes.
is good because we're only here for
So-
2 hours and we want to give you a lot more content before you go in.
And we'll start back. It's 6 minutes after the hour. We'll start back at 11 minutes after the hour. And the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the question that just came in from Carl on
Perfect.
the chat. So we'll see you in 5 minutes. In the questions in chat. So welcome back, everybody. One of the things I wanted to refer to, first of all, is we had a question or two about getting examples of some of the direct email and direct mail. And one thing I wanted to just refer a lot of you to is to Candid's collection of books that are free for you to circulate from our website. This is our Candid Overdrive website. I just put it in the chat. And I was looking through there for a couple of books. One of them is Cause Marketing for Nonprofits, which a lot of what we're talking about is based on. And they have lots of wonderful examples and lots of clear descriptions of all the different things that we're talking about. So I would recommend that book, Cause Marketing for Nonprofits. Another one that I saw was by a woman named Bev Browning, who has written quite a lot of good fundraising books. And she has a book called Perfect Phrases for Fundraising. And that book has just simply language that you might want to use, great ways to communicate the best language for what you need to do. So you go to Candid Overdrive, you can search for Cause Marketing for Nonprofits. You can search for Perfect Phrases for Fundraising by Bev Browning. Or you can look for a guide to prospect research. I just typed in prospect research and found a really fantastic guide. All of these are completely free. You can check them out from anywhere and you can read them electronically. And those are ones that you can do. And I'm going to put the titles in the chat for
Yeah, I was going to say the names of the books that you suggested there, Dave, in the chat if you have a chance. And then I think the other thing I wanted to add too, because I was catching up with some of the questions, is these are all suggestions. Like, we'd rather give you more suggestions than you need. This is pretty much what it is. There's not too many orgs, no matter what size, that are doing all of these all at the same time. These are suggestions that you kind of take, and then you can be like, well, this fits into our plan, how we want to bring in new folks, our staff capacity. This is a perfect thing to involve our board in, or no, we've got other priorities right now. We can't prioritize social media and direct mail. Okay, no worries. That not all are meant to be done all at the same time. They're just ideas for you to kind of incorporate into your strategy and maybe even try a time when you're not as busy to test some things. So I think that's the other thing I wanted to share is that you know your organization and your capacity best.
Yeah, and I think that's referring to what Carl was asking about. You know, not every nonprofit has an endless supply of staff that can be working on all of this different kinds of fundraising.
I mean, even us, we're a big organization. We still have to prioritize what we choose to do with our staff time.
Yes, but one of the great things that you can do with a lot of these methods of prospecting is to not do it all yourself, to partner with your board, to partner with people that are also in the community, partner with people who have already given to you. You are not doing the majority of the work in those situations. You are asking them to do a little bit of the work for you. And yes, coordinating all of that and making sure that following up with people is difficult. And
it's still work and time.
And it's still work. But I recommend that the more people that you can get out there espousing what you do, if you get a grant from a foundation, to go to that foundation and say, we really want to try and develop this kind of fundraising. What can you do? You know, can you help us in any way? Sometimes people say no. A lot of the times people say yes. Here's what I think I can do for you. A lot of people, especially in the world of nonprofits, don't want to say no. Yep. I was brought up as a librarian. I think I was brought up as a librarian. Yeah. And I never want to say no. I want to help people find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
And
And I think the other piece I'll add, which went back to what someone said in the beginning, is the other work that needs to be done. And I don't know if you've done this course yet, and we can redo it again for this group again, Dave, is figuring out what you actually need help with, right? We all know we need money, but there's a building the case part of your planning that we're not talking about today. And that helps you streamline which one of these tactics. We've kind of jumped that piece because we want to dive deep into actually tactics, practical strategies for finding new prospects, but there's a whole part of your work that, you know, really should be done sooner than later to identify what you're needing help with, and that helps you direct your time and attention to when you're clear on what you're asking for.
yeah, definitely, Marcella, your question about, you know, you feel like you're doing it over and over, but it's not changing. Maybe it's time to not do it over and over and to think, what way haven't I tried? And that's the lovely thing about this. And these are drawn from the Cars Marketing book that I mentioned, and I put the title in the chat. You may find an inspiration in there, even beyond what we're able to tell you about today. So I really recommend that.
And if
Now,
anyone else has suggestions for Marcella, please use the chat to also share your ideas. We're going to get through the last 5 of these methods, and then we're going to go into that kind of pre-approach piece so that you can have some more tactical suggestions to take with you beyond just like this initial approach.
Yeah.
What is warm calling, Dave?
Well, warm calling is find a way to make a connection to the person before the call. Sometimes that's an email that you might have dropped. Maybe you ran into that person and say, you know what, I'll give you a call a little bit later. I know you're busy. You know, it's that kind of thing. Maybe it's something where you are talking to a person that you've talked to before, but it's been very kind of unrelated to the other things that you want to do. Warm calling is simply, I know you a little bit. If I call and I say my name, you'll recognize that name. But that doesn't mean that that you have ever mentioned anything about what you want to do. Plan to make a call that is a way of sharing something new with that person in kind of the way that you would do an email to people that you've already met, or somebody that's of, you know, maybe you have Facebook followers and you just got a whole bunch of new ones. To me, there are the warm possibilities. They are people that have shown an indication one way or another that they are finding a way to connect to you. What can you do now to talk to them? Can you invite them to something? Can you say, I'd really like to sit down with you one day and just have, you know, coffee or something and talk about it. I was wondering if you might want to come to this new event that we're trying to plan. It doesn't have to be one thing, but it's a way to, instead of, you know, you could just sit down with a list of people that you got off the internet who you think you're going to donate to, and you pick up that phone and you dial, and half of the people hang up on you and the other half of the people don't answer the phone, and you go, what was the point of that? And that's the reason why you don't do it. You try for a way to do it with somebody that you know is at least going to look at that number that pops up on their phone and says, oh yeah, I remember this person, and answer. You know, you don't want to then say when they pick up, hi, I've been waiting to ask you for thousands of dollars. You instead are building a relationship from this and building a new connection, introducing yourself as a new way, as a new kind of person with them.
Yep. And I'll also add, planning for the call also means planning some questions you'll ask them so that you're not talking the whole time, that you're also listening.
Absolutely.
Well, you love this one, Dave. We did talk a lot about networking in a different workshop yesterday.
Yeah. And I thought that the most interesting thing about this workshop that Krista and I attended yesterday that talked about networking was how people view networking compared to conversation. And then they said, you know, conversation is fun. A party is fun. Networking is work. It's got work right there in the name.
Literally. I don't know if it translates the same way. What's the word in Spanish?
I'm not sure.
Hopefully it's not work. Hopefully it sounds more like fiesta, because that's what we were having this conversation with. Gosh, it's so much easier to connect and communicate when it's a party. But if it's networking, It's boring. Don't let it be boring.
Yeah. Melora says that word doesn't exist. I'm sure.
Okay, good. So hopefully it translates better and this is easier. This is the part that I don't know if you got a chance to translate to. It doesn't need to be the 3 C's. It just happens to be that.
Connecting, communicating, and cooperating. When you were in a situation where you're supposed to work together and talk to one another, and it might be a cocktail party, it might be a work event, it might be something that happens during an event that you're throwing, just you're in a room, you're in an elevator, and you're trying to connect. Sharing information makes good sense. That doesn't mean that you need to make it a hard sell, or that you need to make yourself or that other person feel uncomfortable. You want to just have that kind of chat about, oh, what is it that you do? I thought you might be interested in this. I heard that you were interested in sports. We're doing a new like after school thing, and we're really looking for people to come and see what they think of it, I'm just trying to imagine a situation where it becomes less about work and more about conversation and communicating. And
Yep. And I think it's good here to also, this is like the reminder of like, if you're thinking about, okay, a percentage of my time needs to go to prospecting because that's part of the role in fundraising, and you can figure out what the percentage of time is, carve out time to just be outside, be around new folks where you can, it's almost like brand ambassadorship. It's also getting the name of your organization out there in new potential circles. Sometimes these are more eventy or kind of house gatherings. And this is what I talked to my colleague Nadia about. Like, you don't need to go to everything you're invited to. And maybe you need to be more intentional about getting more invitations and being in those circles, but carve out some time. So maybe you're more of like, I do better at like breakfast things and lunch things, but the evening is when I go home, I unplug and I go to my family. I don't do evening things or, every once in a while. So find how you are flowing your day so that you can incorporate whatever networking works best for you into your fundraising.
Absolutely.
This is the one that always sounds a little weird, Dave.
Organizational initiated website telemarketing. Is that the only? Yeah, there we go. Event.
We've got a few, and I'll just add these up there too. Yep.
Yeah, organization initiated is our larger scale things where you are using, you're using the tracking that you have done, like telemarketing. I'm not probably the best person to advocate for telemarketing since I feel. What can you say about telemarketing?
I know. Well, the point is you can buy lists. Okay. If that's what you want to do for prospecting and it works for you, you can buy lists either through telemarketing or other communications. If you don't have the capacity to send a newsletter or direct mail, you can buy lists and attempt to either make an appeal and ask people for money or send them information and say, scan this QR code and get on our newsletter. And that's a potential way that you can do that. I've recommended that for certain nonprofit clients when it made sense. Buy an arts list, for example, from a theater company, because we already know that this list of folks are interested in the arts, and there's a percentage of a chance that they also might be interested in your theater company. Buy the list and send them your season brochure. Maybe you'll get some new subscribers. Okay. So it's an opportunity where you get this kind of media assistance if you want to try it and invest. And I do think like theater companies tend to do things like that. The Libunts and Sibunts piece, I wanted to make sure to address too. It's also a hard one to translate, but what it stands for is last year, but unfortunately not this
year
or season or something like that. And then S is some year, but unfortunately not this season. And so that means that you're going back to your old lists,
right,
and finding prospects that haven't been giving either in the last year or that haven't given in multiple years. So I did that a lot for old organizations that needed
really good for if you are tracking and you should be tracking who's given to you over the course of time.
Yep.
One of the most rewarding lists that you can ever have are those lists from the past.
Yep.
Because, okay, let's imagine a year like 2020. Let's imagine 2020. 2020 changed a lot of things for a lot of organizations because of COVID, because of who you made connections to. And I think oftentimes when there's some sort of financial crisis of any type, you will find that this year you got donations from people you weren't expecting, but those people that you knew in the past may have disappeared. Don't let them stay disappeared. That's why you have any kind of software, any kind of tracking. It doesn't have to be sophisticated. It doesn't have to be something you paid thousands of dollars for. It can be an Excel spreadsheet. It can be a list that you have. But look at that list again and think, did I get money from this list from 2 or 3 years ago? Do I know why they stopped giving? Have I made that attempt to reconnect with them?
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be a reconnect saying, hey, you gave us money before, but you didn't last year. What's up? It can be, hey, we would really like to let you know where we are right now and how things have changed since the last time you were in connection with us.
Exactly.
It just warmly, the word warm keeps coming back.
It's warm, it's relationship building, it's core to who you are. So make it, authentic to yourself and your organization's culture. And it's the same thing with events. I love this. And it sounds kind of weird to think organization initiated, and you might have good ideas, put them in the chat. But the idea is using the source and the resources that you have in a different way. And this can be super efficient for teams that don't have like a dedicated fundraiser and it's a percentage of your time or one person's time. Also really great ideas for if you're new to an organization. And like I've always only fundraised for small organizations. So new to the organization, dive into the past. Wow, you did a gala before 2020. Okay, we're not doing that anymore because the organization chose not to do that. Let's pull the attendees from past galas and make sure they're in our newsletter and some of our upcoming appeals and invite them to our appreciation holiday event, right? So this is where you can kind of start sourcing. Maybe they're graduates of your program, folks. Maybe you've been around for 15 years and you've already got youth that have graduated from your program and now they're in high school. I mean, these are, or I didn't say high school. Now they're outside of school and they're in college or they're adults. Different ways for you to start thinking through how to re-engage folks that already have shown you that they care about your mission and your cause.
And while we're on this slide, I just want to talk about websites because I think the website has I think people's attitude towards websites has really changed in the last few years. Because websites are so much more, oftentimes much more of an effort to keep updated than something like a Facebook page or a LinkedIn page. But what can you do with your website that will make it help connect to the people that you need? I like the idea of little vignettes, little links to videos, little reasons why somebody would look at your website. Just throwing a web address at people is not a warm way of doing these kind of connections. Well, what is like, oh, they sent me a little email, a little text and said, we have this great video that I'd like you to see. My friend, another friend that is in fundraising, sometimes just does, because she works with recycling and upcycling, she'll just pick something up and do a little video to be like Antiques Roadshow or something like that. She'll just find something that she has worked, I took this wreath and I added some leaves to it and I made it into this kind of thing. And it isn't, there's nothing fundraisy about it, but it draws the attention of people and it gets them to watch this video in the format of their website, which means all of the fundraising and all of the connection is there. It's really great when there's a call to action. Something is happening politically, something is happening in the day, such as Giving Tuesday, such as other notable fundraising, to have a little message that leads a person back to the website, and suddenly they're seeing things that you've always wanted them to see, but they never looked at because you just gave them a URL and you didn't really tell them like why. And
Right.
this gives them a why to do it. Just as a note on the side here, I put the names of those books with the authors for anybody who wants to research them through the Candid's website.
Aw,
They're in the chat there for all of you.
thanks, Dave. We got one more. Because
One
this
more.
people are still talking about crowdfunding. I think it's an important way to actually get to know new people.
Yeah. Crowdfunding, when it started, and I hope that all of you are familiar with the idea of crowdfunding. You don't have to be a nonprofit to do it. You don't have to do it on one particular site. I think the most famous one currently is GoFundMe, but it doesn't have to be a GoFundMe site. It can be other places that you use to do fundraising. What they teach you on all of the crowdfunding sites is that anyone you're connected to might help you out with this. Sometimes it's just like thinking about yourself center of the target. And oftentimes that's how I think about fundraising in general, is think of myself sitting here in the center and thinking, how do I branch out? Who do I know? Well, there's my family, there's my friends, there's people that I've been connected to. How do they then branch out and help? And that's what crowdfunding does. It initiates an online fundraising campaign, and it's very good for specific projects. It doesn't replace traditional fundraising because you don't want to be tied into a crowdfunding website like GoFundMe for everything,
Right.
because it's just a lot of work to maintain. There's a lot of it forces people to look more at GoFundMe than it does to look at what you do.
But it's an option.
It's an option, and it is an option that stimulates giving. We're talking about people that are just not getting new interest and fun. You think you've reached as many people as you can. I'm always stunned at how successful GoFundMe campaigns can be, and how people that you don't know can advocate for you.
Yep.
I found myself looking up giving to a particular person that I've never met yesterday, for a reason that I wasn't aware until yesterday. But it just came up because another friend of mine said, oh, this is interesting, or this is important.
Hmm.
And it is that kind of, welcoming in.
Yep.
I wouldn't rely solely on crowdfunding to fund an organization, but I wouldn't say, oh, that's for individuals and that's for others.
Yeah.
It doesn't help. Lovely thing about being a nonprofit is that you always have more than one option to how you're going to do your fundraising. So take
This
a look
is another
at
one that you could suggest to board. You have to, probably invest in the where it's going to be housed, like Dave said, and find the right platform. But another suggestion for board: use your birthday as an opportunity to. It's not necessarily about how much you're raising, but this is using it as a prospecting tool to get new folks in that you can put through the Madden test and potentially get larger gifts and sustain gifts over time. We already did the break. We're going to keep moving because we said we're going to get you out of here in 2 hours, and we want to give you a little more information before you leave on some next steps. Is that good, Dave, that I keep
Sounds great.
moving this section a little faster?
Yeah, keep going.
First of all, I just love this image because she's just too fun and cute and quirky. But the question is now, okay, we've got some prospecting methods, we've got a Madden test, but genuinely, why do people give? And that's why we started with that kind of motivator on why you're involved. But the truth is, it wasn't meant to be a trick question. It's because they were asked.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we see regularly. And we know that different size organizations have different capacity. But if you're not asking, it's pretty hard to assume that people are just sitting around spending their day trying to find you to be able to give you money. Okay. It's the profession. That's why we get the job, because it's our job to basically ask. So I'm just going to I'm not going to go too fast, but I want Dave to get to his next section. But I wanted to leave you a little bit of stuff to think about the power of our brains for this kind of psychology piece of why people are going to give in the first place. And this can affect either our confidence or our kind of opportunity to say, let's try it and see if it works. So there are psychological influences, and then there are cultural influences from our brain. And the psychological side is kind of like affecting our perception, our mood, our attitudes, or our self-image. And then the sociocultural side is that culture, our customs, maybe more of like the physical environment, potentially even our social class, the things that are essentially around us. And what we do is when we have all of those as part of our brain, it's all in there when we're all so different, the communication model can be a little challenging. There's the sender on the left, the fundraiser, that's saying message, like Dave was talking about, cause selling, or use emails, or do crowdfunding. And then there's a bunch of noise. And then there's the receiver, the donor, that's like decoding all of these messages all day long. And that's happening given all of this stuff, right? That we have all of these psychological and sociocultural influences in our brains already around us every day. Plus, let's remember, there is so much noise between social media and the internet and our families and our jobs and everything else happening. There's a lot that can happen in the middle here, where the message isn't basically getting communicated necessarily in the way that you want. And some of that is the choice of words, visual distractions. I'm going to just kind of like say overcomplication 3 times. We can sound way more complicated than it actually is in our work. We use too much jargon a lot of times. And then bad listening habits, either we're not listening or picking up cues from them when we call them and they're clearly trying to rush off the phone, for example, or maybe they're not in a place. They pick up the phone, but they are doing it to be polite and they're not actually really listening to what you're saying. And then the timing, right? Sometimes we're having a bad day. That's out of your control, right? There's the timing of the season. I've tried to tell people all the time, this is a busy time for nonprofits. So if you're going to send out an email asking them to be a part of a survey, you're going to have to be very mindful that there's a lot going on. And I want to also get back to choice of words here, which is why we don't love to over give you samples of emails and scripts and things like that, because your words talking about your work you're the best one to write it. Because of that, because you want to really choose the right words that are going to, fit your cause and who you're trying to reach. So the solution for all of that, all the things that are happening in our brain that arrive to why we're getting these communications, is to really keep yourself and your organization top of mind. So TOMA stands for top of mind awareness. That's the awareness that is that brand ambassadorship, that brand recognition, the purpose of why you want to go outside and network or keep new people, regularly communicated and kind of engaged in your organization so that you're top of mind for them. And we've already talked about prospecting methods, but you also want to think about how not just somebody said this, I've been trying to reach this person through a referral. I reached out a few times. Now what? Well, let's get back to top of mind awareness. It's really about regular communication that is, planned out on how you can keep it top of mind. Are they following you on social media? That's a great call to action. Follow our Facebook page, and then you make sure that the content's good there. Don't want to do social media? Don't worry about it. That's also where the emails come in, or even the snail mail, dropping a postcard in the mail. Happy Thanksgiving, or is there, a more local holiday that makes more sense to your organization? Photos of, your past programming. Maybe there are virtual events that happen. You can make them pretty simple, like a virtual cafecito, right? And you bring people together every Friday morning to get to know you, some of your staff, and hear an impact story. You can use the phone or even text. There are other ways that you can kind of keep folks top of mind. You're not just getting that initial approach, which was the 10 methods of prospecting, but now you're building it into everything that you do within the organization to keep contacting them. Yeah, when you start thinking about, Krista, you said I should have a list of 10 to 30 of these folks, and now I got to contact them regularly. This is a hard job. It is. And that's why we want you to keep qualifying them so that you can prioritize who you're keeping top of mind. You can't think that every potential person out there you can keep top of mind. So I want to just encourage
Marcella
you
has
to
a
think
great
about the
suggestion.
qualification of them, right, Dave? Yeah.
Right, absolutely. Marcella has a great suggestion for
Oh.
a way to get people together and keep it concentrated on a small amount. I think that's a terrific idea.
Oh, yes, exactly. I love it. And getting people engaged. If you're genuinely sitting around, this is something that's happened with our team. We're sitting around as a team internally, and we're like, we want to plan this thing and we want to get people involved, but we just don't know what they're interested in. You know what? We were like, well, let's ask them. Okay. So there's other ways that you can actually, instead of just telling, and that goes back to like the brain and how we receive information. If you're just telling and telling and talking, then that's one way. But if you can use email, snail mail, the phone and text, and other methods of keeping top of mind by asking questions, also a great way to keep people engaged and keep you basically at the top of their mind. So that was my little section on, figuring out who you do that with. Oh, and my best suggestion is practice with your board. That's what I wanted to hit there. If you're not doing this regularly with your board and your kind of key donors, it's going to be hard to start doing this with new prospects. So practice these things with your board first. And we've got the kind of second part of phase 1, Dave, that is the pre-approach and the cycle, right?
Yeah, and so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the pre-approach in the last 15 minutes here. What to do before you meet up. So you've identified potential people, you've identified them from using all sorts of different prospecting, and you're thinking, well, I want to meet with them. I'm gonna make a connection with them. I'm going to make that first meeting. Even before you do that, you want to make sure that you are prepared. The planning and preparation that you have to do prior to a contact with a potential prospect is as important as that meeting. You don't want to just go in. I think a lot of people think, oh, I'll just go in there and it'll come to me, and that's dangerous if you are being serious about making this an ongoing situation. Sometimes it works really well. Sometimes it works really badly.
Yeah.
So,
and I've seen some bad meetings. Sorry to say it.
but this is a pre-approach. Yeah, I've seen some bad ones too. I've been in some bad ones too. Some of the sources of pre-approach information are simply, what would you do if you were meeting somebody? I have one of our trainers loves to talk about it as a dating kind of idea.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be, you don't have to make it a real high pressure dating kind of situation. I'm going to meet this blind date with this potential funder. Who would I find out about this person with? Well, I would ask their colleagues, any donors that that might be able to share. Oh, this representative of a foundation, these board members. Do you know this person? I have a meeting. I would love to have you come along to that meeting. I would love to have you give me some information before I have this meeting. And when it gets right down to it, there is a lot of places where you can go to do research on the internet. And that doesn't mean you spy on them, you don't stake their house out or anything like that, but you want to be able to do some looking on LinkedIn and some looking on Google. Oh, here's them pictured at an event that happened in the city, and here's who's they're with. Hey, I know that person. Let me talk to them about them.
Especially if they've given to another nonprofit in your community. These are important. And it's like there's an article about it. Yeah. Like these are important things to know before you start prospecting and getting to know them, to ask them.
I was thinking, because one of the concerns that has been introduced in the chat, and I'm going back to it, Carl was talking about the challenge of prospecting, because you have expectations about who's going to fund where. But the more you know about this person, the more you know their capability of doing something. Whenever I talk about foundation fundraising, I would see, have they ever done it before? Have they ever given internationally? Have they ever given to a small town or a small organization? It's the same kind of thing that you do with individuals. You ask the questions that you can't possibly know. You research the questions you can't possibly know. You
Mm.
can use social media during the pre-approach, but you can use it to maximize the reach and effectiveness to boost your pre-approach efforts by making yourself more present. And you can search prospects on social media, Google social media, Facebook, Instagram, all the different things. It's not perfect. It doesn't guarantee that it's going to give you the absolute answers. And people's social media personas, I think that we all know, are not always the full story of that person.
Right.
So there's no real substitute for more than one source of information. Regular media is a fantastic place, but again, it's not the answer to the question. I used to teach a course that was about prospecting, that was looking at articles that get published. And if you wonder about the article, and one of these articles says this person is a jerk, and another one says this person is a great person,
Right.
are either of these completely right? I mean, maybe they're, not saying that they're a jerk, but maybe
something in between.
there's something in between, because real people are more complicated than that.
Yeah.
So when you use social media, be very careful. When you use the internet for any reason, be very careful about what you're reading. You're reading it from the New York Times. You're reading it from the Washington Post. You're reading it from some guy's opinion on his blog. There's different levels.
Definitely don't read the Dave Holmes blog. No, just kidding.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Read the Candid blog where Dave Holmes is published.
Yes, there's a difference. The pre-approach checklist goes back to some of the things that we talked about at the very beginning. Who is driving the philanthropic decisions? If you're meeting a family, if you're meeting a couple, who is making these kind of decisions? Who's driving the philanthropic decisions based on what they care about? What is it that they're giving? When they give to a place like a youth home, what was the driving force? Was it the location of that youth home? Was it the fact that it is a youth home that is doing a particular kind of service? You need to know, of course, things that you can track. So that would be, if this organization or this person, has ever given to your organization before, you need to know that. There's nothing that makes a person freeze up more is to think that you are they think they're not a stranger to you, and you treat them as if they are.
Yes.
So know that connection. Know a little bit about them based on their personal interests. Do they publish things and they're always wearing a jersey from this particular sports team, or they're always shown at a basketball game, or they're always shown I don't know why I got sports on the brain, but
Yeah,
it could be
sports brand.
Sports brand.
It's true. Or have you been to their office before and know that they've got something on the wall, or these kind of like tidbits about what they're interested in?
Like they have they wear a tie that indicates something, or they wear a little thing on their lapel. Pay attention to those. Pay attention to what you can find out about their passions and priorities. This is, again, not spying into their personal life. It's spying into their public life a little bit, though, and finding out what they...
And researching. We had a woman in San Diego, big donor. Again, people needed to learn that it wasn't her husband and her husband's business. It was her that was making a lot of those decisions and driving them. Very involved on a lot of boards, made philanthropic donations herself, but was honestly a better connector. And I needed her at the time, or I was, prospecting her at the time to be a connector for me, because I learned enough through time that she wasn't going to give to our organization. She had her priorities, but I needed her connector strength. And I learned through friends of colleagues in the space that she loved walks on the beach with her dog. That's how she did her get to know you meetings. This is such an important part of the pre-approach, because I got to all of this by realizing that once I finally made the approach, I needed to invite her to a walk on the beach. Okay.
Well, there you go. That is a perfect example. And you see these things and you find them out by a little bit of research, a little bit of reading, talking to other people. One of my favorite Google searches, just a simple Google search, is the name of the person and the word charity, or the name of the person and the word
Oh.
giving, I always found something that told me about, this person showed up to work in this day of giving at this organization. All of these were useful things, useful parts of that picture. And I kept them in a folder. I reviewed them before I met them every time, so I didn't miss anything. And you also find out things that, if you go up and to a person who's recently experienced a loss and you say, "Oh, how's your wife? How's your spouse doing?"
Yeah.
That's bad. You need to be
Ouch.
able to know where they are in their life. So
Yeah.
this is all part of the research.
That's why I think this phase is important and often slower, Dave. I was thinking about it as you were kind of going through it. It's like we can qualify them fairly quickly, but you might stay in pre-approach for a while. And yes, I think the other thing that I'm thinking through here is that, like, there are different kind of, I don't mean to use the word level, but it's true in this scenario. There are going to be different level of prospects for you. And this is moving us more towards a larger gift, a more engaged major donor. And this is moving you more towards kind of that around, like, really, really taking time, or potential board member, or, like I said, a community connector. And this is going to be an important percentage of your time, but it's going to go slower because it's not that you want to, like, tiptoe. It's just that, like, yeah, you don't want to have to be in that situation where you're like, sorry, I didn't know. When it's probably public knowledge if you have that relationship or that kind of proximity to them. Oh yeah, and there's one word bullet.
And connections, any of those connections that you want to make sure you follow up with them so that you can get the input.
Yeah, or for example, maybe in that scenario, when my initial approach, I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't just go on the beach walk with her alone. Maybe there's another person that I should be inviting that's connected to her a little more, and it's going to make it even that much warmer for this actual meeting, right? And this is all part of the prospecting stage.
And I want this last part I want to go through, but I don't want to miss some of the essential things. But I do want to make sure that that this is all the process of getting close to this person. When you have a pre-ask meeting, you are meeting with that person who you think might be giving, but you're not going to be asking them for money at that time. It's going to be helpful if you're trying to do the Madden test on that person. Some of you have mentioned in the questions that you have, well, what if you don't know all about them? Well, that's what this is for. It's not for asking for a gift. It's for building rapport and gathering info. You can go on in that. It's an idea to move closer to the gift. You build a relationship with this potential donor in a way that isn't threatening to them, that doesn't make them feel like you're putting pressure on them right away. And you're listening. A lot of the rest of what happens before you make the ask is listening to what they say, is listening to what they are interested in, listening to what they do. Carl says, when you get close, sometimes they become friends, and that seems more important than the ask. Yes, you're not losing sight of the idea that at some point you may be asking them for money, but it's easier to ask someone with whom you have an actual relationship rather than I'm pretending to be your friend for 5 minutes so that I can ask you for money.
Yeah.
It is
People
much
often
better.
say, yes, and people often say you listen your way to the ask. I don't know how that translates exactly either, but I kind of think it's a nice concept because when you get to that point, like Carl's talking about, it really ultimately isn't an ask. Sometimes you do need to make the formal ask, but they know it's coming. It's so much easier when you get to stage 7 if you do all of these other things beforehand.
So when you're doing this, questions your donors are wondering, these are the things that you were going to be filling in to them. And you don't have, this doesn't necessarily come directly from the donor, but it is some things that you should have in the back of your mind as you're talking about what you do every day, as it's talking about, this are the things that they're considering. What will you do with my gift? Is the work you do really unique? if you think of these as a framing way of having in the back of your mind as you talk to them, I know this person is going to be curious about this. I'm going to try and make it as easy as possible. You don't go through and answer the questions.
No.
Oh, my organization does this. How much money am I prepared to give? You should be giving me lots. You don't answer the questions that way, but think of it from their perspective. They're not even thinking about a gift yet. They're thinking about, why should I invest in you? How else do I know that it's contributed to your organization? How long? Why should I trust you? I think number 10 might be the most important of everything that we talked about today, because that's what builds the ability to get gifts, especially from people that you're just meeting, people that you are trying to build a relationship. I ask this sometimes, with an official or somebody comes to the door and they're campaigning for something. And I feel sorry for them because they're going door to door and meeting people they've never met before. But my question to them in my mind is always, why should I trust you? And I can think of all sorts of ways that you can break that trust. It's by being unnatural, by being obviously not listening, by being obviously pushy. Listening is going to help you. It builds the trust that you need. What did we had another speaker yesterday talking about trust as I forget the phrase that she used.
Yeah, like a competitive edge.
Yeah. Trust is an edge that you can use.
And that it was their community partners that gave them trust in their community. Who else are you partnering with? The board allowed new donors and funders to trust them, and then existing donors. So prospecting is also like, you don't just want somebody with money that is doing this to make them look good and getting something that you can't give in return. But you can give community acknowledgement on your website, maybe even an opportunity for their company to come and have a volunteer day. So really thinking through the right type of prospect that you want is going to be the one that you're going to build trust around.
Yeah, and we have 2 slides next. I'm not sure if we can get into depth with this.
I don't think we should. I think we should get some questions, and then you all can contact us or dive deeper into some of those on your own. But
you will have the slides, of course, to review.
Yeah.
You already have them to download. If you have any questions, if you have a fear that we've not addressed, or if there's something that a lot of you have talked about, the challenges of knowing where somebody is likely to give internationally or locally. That's what prospecting is about, is trying to decide where that is. The uncertainty about, is this person like going to give to me, or do they really care about the things that I do? A lot of that can be solved by meeting people that know them, by researching, by doing your homework, essentially.
Yep, that's it. Is the gap in, the more you dive into these prospects, the gap in the information that you have is part of the strategy that you work on. And I really am serious about it, folks. Like, you don't have to do this for everybody. This is about prioritizing. If you're like, you know what, we have too many gaps with that person, it's not a no. It's just that, like, let's focus on what we might call the low-hanging fruit, or the ones that are a much stronger, closer relationship, and put the time into those folks first. So we'll just have some kind of general question asking if you have to go right now. We completely are grateful for this time with you, but we'll stick around for a few more minutes to ask any or answer any questions.
And I know that Melora wanted to speak something about the next program.
Oh, let's do that, and then we can stick around for questions.
I'm going to put the survey in the link in the chat. So if you can fill this out before you log off today, that would be very helpful.
We love your feedback.
Yes. And Melora, did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you, David. Just wanted to remind everyone that we have our last webinar in December. We had it scheduled for December 7th, but we're going to have to change the date. So we'll let you know about the new date. but it's going to be in December, and it's 8 practical strategies for finding new donors. I don't know, David, if you want to talk a little bit about it.
The next, let me make sure I'm getting the right one up here, because we are talking about practical strategies right now. I have to
or 8 steps for finding new donors, I think.
Oh,
8
you
steps,
not for finding new donors. It might be 8 steps for, is it finding new donors? This is maybe.
Yeah,
So
I'll tell you
dive
what it
into the other
does.
steps.
I'll
That's
just tell
good.
you what it is. I don't, whatever the title is, as we've talked about it, it is delving even further into what we just started talking about today.
Oh, I love that. You guys are going to get the other steps. Ah,
So we went through the first 2 steps of that 8-step process that Krista showed you at the beginning. The next program will go into depth about, once you've identified this person, once you've met this person, what do I do next? How do I overcome some of the things that they say to me about not wanting to give? How do I get to the point where I know I'm ready to make the ask? I think a lot of the questions that came in were getting you started to thinking about that, because you're already getting ahead. You're thinking, oh, I know this person, but what do I do? What do I do? What happens? That's what we're going to be delving into. So,
yeah.
And we will work, Melora, if you want to talk to me and Stephen, and we'll get a fix on exactly the date and let everybody know. Sounds great.
Okay, let me check for questions.
And advice on
Yeah.
reconnecting with
Yes.
individuals or institutions who've been disenchanted with an organization in previous years, but might be willing to partner now. My advice for that kind of situation is to be completely and utterly honest. This is candid, right? We're talking candid here. Be completely and utterly honest with them. Ask them why they were disenchanted, because chances are the fact that everyone is not disenchanted and you're not disenchanted with the organization, it's because there's been a change. They need to know about that change, and the fact that you're bringing it to them and saying, I know, I thought that maybe you were disenchanted. I wanted to hear, what was it that really bothered you about what happened? And let me see if I can talk about how it's different now. You're not making excuses. You're not saying it was better when they say it wasn't good, but you are saying that things are different now. It's an opportunity, really, because when you have run into a person that has felt that their organization has changed in a negative way, you want to try and make sure that they know exactly what they're thinking, and they know exactly where you are. So that's why.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. Great question. I'll add to that too, Dave. I think you're right in all those aspects. Try to do some internal research too before you ask them. Because often this is like what has happened to me. You come into an organization, you're new-ish, and you're looking back at past partners. There might be some institutional knowledge internal that will help you identify, because there may be an actual, like, maybe it hasn't been updated in your database, but it's like, actually that person said, like, don't contact them anymore. Or their giving priorities have changed. And so I've had that situation before where we didn't track institutional knowledge well enough, and then the donor was like, I've told you guys this like every year when you have a new development director. And that's often what happens because we have high turnover, and that's where they start getting frustrated and not trusting us. So yes, get ready to ask them, but do some internal research first and say, before reach out to them, I really want to understand if anyone knows what happened here.
And I am putting the title of the next program, by the way, in the chat. 8 steps for cultivating relationships.
Cultivating relationships. That's what it was. I was like, almost think I wrote it.
I think that Krista was having like a clash from her previous organization.
I was like, my head went together. I love that somebody said that it was actually practical, because that makes me so happy. I know it's a lot of information. It can be hard to kind of go, we don't have the capacity. Where do we fit this in? But I like, it's carving out time to plan a little more, so that you can then start fitting in prospecting time for your organization. That's the most important piece, is you carved out this time to be with us today. Gracias. Also, maybe an hour a day or, you know, a block a week where you're like, nobody bother me, or I'm gonna go to a cafe and I'm just gonna plan and figure out what strategies I can actually try and implement this year.
But if anyone has any questions based on what we talked about, or you go through the materials and you have questions based on those, I'll be sending a sort of a summary of what we shared and some of the additional resources we mentioned. There's our email addresses, David Holmes and Krista Berry. If you want to reach out to us, please do so. We're so glad that you could join us today.
Yes. Email us if you have any other questions, and muchas gracias too.
Talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Melora.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Krista.
Everybody. Thank you, Salid.
Gracias a todos por participar. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Recordings and materials are on our Pro Capacidad website. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.